Welcome to Talksicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged, the place where we talk about all things substance abuse, recovery, and mental health, with guests offering varying perspectives and viewpoints. Hosts Joseph Gordo and Jason Cabello share about their addiction and recovery and other serious subject matter through lighthearted yet candid conversation.
1, 2, 3, shoot. Ha! You know what? I'm going to intro, even though I won.
Please.
Welcome to another episode of Talksicology. The intro just told you that I'm your host, Joseph Gordo, and this gentleman right here in the beautiful green cardigan is Mr. Jason Cabello, the co-host S with the most S.
Sure.
I think I just regendered you. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I could be fluid.
Yeah. Oh, man. It seems like lately, every time we're about to record this show, I've got all the anxiety from all the things that are going on.
Why don't you turn your phone upside down? That might help it.
Look, I'm gonna put it on Do Not Disturb.
Okay, this is great content here.
Yeah. It is good content. We all struggle. That's a struggle that everyone has.
It is. And you're a busy man.
Yeah.
It's not like you're...
And a tornado hit residential last night. You may not know this.
I don't.
Yeah.
Wow.
For the second time in 6 years, Res got hit by a tornado.
I'm not going to call it an omen, but that seems pretty... Is that kind of... So, living in Florida, we don't get many tornadoes. We get hurricanes, and you see those coming.
Yes.
So a tornado just kind of...
Tornadoes have very little, if any, preemptive warning to them.
Jesus.
So, yeah, we got hit by a tornado. It lasted about 20, 25 seconds. All the clients and staff are quite safe.
Good.
But the roof...
is not.
No.
Okay. Do we need to get up there with a tarp after this?
No, I got people.
Okay, good.
I got people.
Good.
But I will send you some pictures of the damage so that you can splice it into the episode and make it
I can,
real fun like that.
That's well, I'm glad everybody's safe. That's what's important. The clients at Recovery Unplugged are number one. That's our main concern.
Numero uno.
Speaking of Recovery Unplugged, our title sponsor. I love the place.
Yeah.
Saved my life.
Yeah.
For my drug and alcohol, my drug addiction. Saved my life there, but now we've expanded to mental health services.
Oh, yeah.
And so a big thing that I talk about in my recovery was that I had to get out of my own way before I could accept help, right? And now we make it that much easier to get out of your own way, because if your excuse is, I can't leave home, I have kids, I can't leave work, we have virtual services where you could log in
from your phone, laptop, iPad.
Wherever you're at.
Yeah, whatever. You could probably do it from like an Alexa at this point.
Probably. I mean, you could go to Starbucks and get your treatment there if you want.
Yeah. Local public library.
Local public library. It's a hot spot for the kids, I know. Check out the periodicals. But so knowing that we do offer these other services, just besides substance abuse.
Yeah.
Now that we're doing mental health. Is there anything, because you and I have talked about our addiction.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you struggle with mental health wise?
Oh, man. Well, so I don't have any kind of formal diagnosis. I don't think I'm a person whose mental health requires medications or anything like that.
Okay.
But I do suffer from imposter syndrome. I do manage... I do function with a fair amount of stress and anxiety at all times.
Yeah, that seems like to be the wave that you ride, though. I think that but I think you've harnessed it pretty well.
Yeah.
Like you've learned to, use it for good and not, it doesn't
evil.
keep you down. Yeah, I wouldn't say evil, but like you've learned to.
It's not crippling. It's manageable for me, and I think it at times can be quite helpful.
Right.
Because here's the thing about all mental health disorders, right? So like anxiety, right? There's a function to anxiety. There's a reason it's built into us that we can experience it, right? So anxiety itself is not bad, right? But there's kind of a spectrum, where we go from healthy anxiety to unhealthy, Does my anxiety push me to try to do my best and be organized and prepare? Or does my anxiety cause me to
lock yourself in
paralyze.
The house and not leave and agoraphobic.
Exactly. Same thing with depression. You know what I mean? Like sadness is a human emotion that exists for a reason. But you know, it can get to a point where it becomes debilitating.
If it's always there and it
Yeah.
just comes up for no reason,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
so my thing is ADHD, which I kind of downplay just because I've lived with it my whole life. But my girlfriend will tell you, like, I'm not going to say crippling because that is just that's way overstating it. However, I can't just do something. So that's the difference between ADD and ADHD is like I have to act on it.
Yeah.
So if I'm, say, doing the dishes and then I'm like, oh, I forgot to send that email, I will leave with the water running to go send an email. On the way, I'll see a shirt that I forgot to put away. So I'll have to put up the shirt before I send that email. And when I'm in the closet, I'll see a jacket and I'm like, oh, I left something in the pocket there, pull it out. And then just
So on and so forth.
yes.
Yeah.
Like, and it is.
And that is what you do.
That is what I do.
Okay.
Yeah. It takes, and I have this thing, like, to leave the house to even, say, go to the gym or go skating
Yeah.
takes me a good hour and a half. I pace. I have my panic bags. I have like 5 different bags. Even if I'm just going to the skate park, I have 5 different bags with all my different things in it. And it's just, and that's a thing for people with ADHD.
Yeah.
It's called the panic bags.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's pretty,
I've never heard of this.
pretty bad. It's
Yeah.
pretty bad. I will just pace and pace. I have to give myself a half hour to just pace.
So do you feel like that half hour is just going to be your way of coping with it? Or do you have like a goal on changing that behavior? Or do you feel the need to change that behavior at all?
I do, just because sometimes it'll be so bad that I don't get anything done.
Yeah.
And, my partner, Gabby, she's been really helpful with like finding ways to help me with that. So she's put this, you've been to the house.
Yeah.
We have that little hand that like on the wall, just a wooden sculpture of a hand. So then when I get there, I put my keys, my wallet, my glasses, these things that I'm going to pace around and look for.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing. I pace around so much and I'll put things in different places that when it's time to go,
Yeah.
I've scattered all my stuff all around the house and I have to remember.
Oh man.
So, not a terrible problem, but it's definitely something that I've dealt with that like I don't recognize all the time. Like this is something that I have to deal with. But and she like, so if I have to make coffee, like I'll make her coffee in the morning because I'm a good boyfriend. And I will always leave things out. So I will leave the coffee out. I will leave the cream out. I will leave the spoon that I mixed it with out. I will leave the sugar out. Everything.
Some grounds scattered on the counter.
So Gabby has come up with this little song for me. So every time I'm done with something, I have to in my head sing, "Put it away, put it away, put it away now." And so anytime I'm done doing something, I sing that song in my head, and I get things done a little bit more. So yeah, I'm learning to cope.
Yeah. Speaking of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, playing in Austin this Sunday for weekend 2 of ACL, and I'm not going.
No?
The Chili Peppers are okay. They got some stuff that I love. I think they're a little overrated. And also, I've seen them like 3 times.
I saw them in their prime.
Sock era?
I think it might have been a little bit before the soccer. It was probably like 1989.
Oh, Jesus.
So
I was 5.
I was 37.
Old best.
No, but yeah, I got to see them at this little club in South Beach, Miami, Club 1235. And there was probably like 75 or 80 people there, and they were great. They were great. Then I'm not
Was
a
it the original guitarist,
Yes.
Hillel
Yes.
Slovak?
I believe so. So if it's, let's say 89 it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not that big of a fan.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call myself a fan. But they were great to watch back then in their prime. I haven't seen them. I think I see them at one of the early Lollapaloozas, but
They do ACL every couple of years.
yeah.
Yeah. But they've got, man, people love them. I don't know.
They're resilient. They've been around for a long time.
I don't feel like they're relevant.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough hating on the Red Hot Chili Peppers. This week's guest is someone that I've known for what, 9 years, something like that, a long time.
Okay.
We worked together at one point. We started a program together. I have a very clear memory. Me and Chelsea were going through a hard time at one point, and I remember one time this man sat in the parking lot of Infinite Recovery with me as I cried and was just sad at him.
What a good friend.
He's a good dude. Nick is an all-around good dude. So today's guest is a man who is in recovery. He's an addiction professional, has worked in addiction for almost as long as I have, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So that means he's getting old too. He's got some of the best hair that you will see anywhere in the Austin recovery community.
Lucky.
He's a man who's got a lot of hobbies. He's got a cool recovery story, and we've been to some festivals together. So without any further ado, let's give a warm toxicology welcome to Mr. Nick Ballejo.
Poof.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Poof. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey,
Yeah.
glad to be here. Glad to be on. I just came on just now. We haven't been talking at all.
It magically appeared.
No, just like manna from heaven. We really are hyping you up, aren't we?
Yeah. That's what we like to do.
Yeah.
It's a good thing, because I tend to start to get nervous, especially if I probably look and see myself over there. So I'm just not going to look over there.
Yeah, there's monitors.
You'll
over
forget
here,
about it in
so,
a minute. So tell you what, we were just talking about, mental health, right? Because, we've all been in recovery for multiple years, right? But it's not all la-di-da, So like, what do you still struggle with today?
I related to both of you guys. I think anxiety, and it's funny because I was just at the doctor the other day, and you go through the list, and there's always a mixed feeling going through that. Like being in recovery, you're kind of like, because I used to embellish when I was in my addiction. I'd see the doctor and I'd be like, gosh, it's like my anxiety's like an 8 right now.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I don't even know how I made it here today. And there's a lot of med seeking behaviors with that kind of stuff. And then there's like a little bit of like, well, I don't want to like skip past that, because that is something that's real for me. And what I've discovered in my own mental health is it comes in waves, like I remember passing through the depression thing, and I've been diagnosed like with mild depression in the past and things like that. And so it's not something that I want to slide over, but it's also one of those things where it's like, hey, I have these things. They're not currently. I don't feel like
let's
anything's
not make a
going
big
on.
deal about it.
I feel a lot of people in recovery do that because it's like you try to live in like this gratitude thing where you're just like, the worst is behind me. I've been through some shit. Like, this isn't that bad.
Yeah.
But you gotta, if it, you don't want it to become that bad.
That's true. I think as like probably a lot of us, like COVID brought up so much.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think we started doing virtual meetings. I wasn't accustomed to that. I started checking emails and playing phone games and stuff like that.
Right.
And a lot of that too is because I saw other people kind of doing that on their screen. They had like, you could see the glow of the TV in the background and stuff. And so,
and in in-person meetings, it's very different, right? Like usually most meetings, somebody will call you out, be like, bro, get off your fucking phone.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah, most definitely. And so, there's a lot of stuff that came up during that, period of time, especially with depression. Video games got really bad for me. And I was not a video game player prior to that. I did every once in a while.
Right.
So, yeah.
What game was it for you? Were you like a Fortnite guy?
No. I got really into, and I still play with some of my friends, but
Animal Crossing.
Minecraft, which is not a bad game, but Call of Duty, like the Warzone stuff, and now Apex and stuff like that. So,
in my early recovery, so I had maybe about 2 years sober, a year and a half, 2 years sober. I was gifted an Xbox for Christmas one year, and I got Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was the jam back then, and I hadn't owned a game console in years because drugs.
Yeah,
right. And Harper had just been born, and I got so obsessed with Call of Duty that like I was staying up super late, and then in the mornings I wouldn't want to wake up with him, or he'd be taking a nap and he'd wake up and I'd be like, I'm just finish this round and then I'll go get him. And I had to do step work with my sponsor at the time around my relationship with Call of Duty. So I get that.
Yeah. I've never played it. Never played that what is it? First person
shooters.
Never played one.
Oh man.
Never.
yeah.
Once you could start going like 3D and not just left to right, I was like, this is too complicated
did you
for
play
me.
like Wolfenstein or Doom or
Doom. I played Doom, but like Mario was like that
Yeah.
was as into a game as I could get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it got a little crazy for sure. I think kind of getting back in the mix. Therapy was something for me that really helped with that stuff. We did. Me and my significant other Nina, we went through couples therapy, and it was like just really kind of reestablishing because I think we do all the things that make us seem like we're doing okay,
Yeah.
and that's the thing for me, right?
Right.
Like
Keeping
so-
up appearances.
keeping up appearances, and I think I hide behind the nice guy. And I think I'm genuinely a nice person.
You are.
But I think that's also something that is a bit of a mask
You
too.
can deflect some stuff with that.
For sure.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. What are you talking about? I'm a good guy.
I'm not mad. I'm not mad.
I'm not gaslighting you. Look at how nice I am, right? Speaking of gaslighting, I have never understood what gaslighting really is.
What it means,
It
or
just
what
gets-
it.
It just gets thrown around so much that it's like I don't know what gaslighting is.
Yeah, that's become a that word will start a fight in my house because it's just like if we say like you're gaslighting me now, it's just gonna like one of us just has to say like, listen, we're not gonna take this any further. Let's just have a minute and say we're not gaslighting each other. We love each other.
So Nick, we've already talked about video games. We've already talked about mental health. But let's get some of the basic stuff down, right? How long you've been sober? What kind of recovery do you practice? And how fucked up were you before that started?
Yeah, so in November, so next month, I guess, I'll have 12 years of
Whoa. That's
sobriety.
awesome.
I
That's
appreciate
great.
that.
That's
Thank
great.
you. It's crazy for me to even think about it, because I still have the same brain in here. So, 12 steps is what started it for me. 12-step recovery kind of built the foundation, mixed with a little bit of therapy, and that started to grow as well as I kind of I really launched into the 12 steps, doing the work, sponsor, deep dived into that, and then some of the stuff that you guys were kind of talking about with anxiety and just like sometimes that being crippling. As I got probably around 2 years, I had to start kind of branching off and start looking into like my own therapy, and that kind of developed. So I do EMDR.
Explain that to you might not know what
For
that is.
the listener, for Kathy in Wisconsin.
Okay, Kathy, this one's for you. So EMDR is really just trauma work, right? So you kind of work with both sides of your brain. Usually you'll develop a safe place, which that's kind of it was a difficult thing for me. I remember my therapist was like, really think about like a place like a lot of people imagine like on top of a mountain or in a prairie and I kept on like, this was like 2 weeks of a process, but they were like, I kept on just being on my couch like, with like a bag of potato chips,
You know what's wild? So I've never done EMDR, but I remember one time we were doing this guided meditation in the last rehab I ever went to. And she was like, find a happy place. She's like, maybe the forest or a mountain. And every like idyllic setting that you can think of, something negative would come up. Like, the beach. Oh, my father lives at the beach. Whatever, right? So eventually my happy place was actually this other rehab that I was in. The one in Mexico that I was in for like a year. That was my happy
Your
place.
safe place, yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, like if rehab is your safe place, things are bad. But so with the EMDR, you find your happy couch.
Happy couch, right? And that was like my therapist was like, did you really put some thought in? I'm like, yes, it's the couch. And so you establish a safe place, and then you kind of walk through these traumatic. And sometimes something will bring it up, So a lot of times in sessions, I would bring up something that kind of happened throughout the week, or something that I, almost like a resentment that I couldn't like really let go of, and then we would kind of walk through it being like, when are the first times that you could really remember, somebody ignoring you or not, and then you kind of walk through that. And then once you find that big piece, right, of being like that one time, I was shouting for my dad, and he like wouldn't like turn around or something like that, And so you kind of work through that. You can use clickers or you can use
these little lights to make your
the lights for sure. There's some virtual versions that I've seen. Yeah, my favorite I think are just kind of like the clickers because you don't really have to pay attention too much to it. Like it's just like you feel the buzz in your hand
and the reason for that is because the eye movement or the clickers is to activate the different sides of your brain, and that somehow helps to. I'm gonna simplify it, but like to release the trauma.
Gotcha.
Right. Then it's interesting. I've heard so many different stories of where it was like I've heard about the therapist that was working with trauma, herself or something like that, and she was watching like a tennis match or something at the park, and then I heard somewhere else. I think there's a couple of claims to fame on it. So.
You know what's funny though? So like let's say she was watching the tennis match, right? Now she was like, "Oh, it has to do with both sides of my brain." She could have easily assumed like, "Oh, you must watch tennis to release trauma." Or there's something magical about Serena Williams. She's a trauma, just
Right. It could have went a whole different direction.
Just those two tennis players, they're like, listen, y'all, I don't know what kind of magic you guys got going on. What if it was like a ping pong match?
Yeah.
With the clicks too.
Yeah.
With the clicks.
Got the best of both worlds.
So before you got sober though, no, let's not even do that. Let's stay on this. I like this. I think one thing that I know I was under this impression when I first got sober is that like if I could just quit doing drugs, like that's it. Like I'm good.
Yeah.
Right. And what I found is that folks who stay sober, like there's always another thing to work on. Right. But I found that, some people don't do that, right? I know people that are sober that they still just do their 12-step meeting every single day. But I've always described to the idea, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, or maybe in the 12 and 12, it mentions that AA is spiritual kindergarten. It's like the entry point into this world of growth and spirituality.
Yeah, you don't want it to be like finite. You want to keep on growing, keep on moving, trying new things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of look at my journey, right? And I kind of think about those things like that stuff, right? Like my sponsor was very much so 12-step by the book, sit down, he's like, you can drink a cup of coffee and smoke a cigarette while you're meditating. I'm fine with that, kind of deal. And I'll never forget having like the conversation because there was a time in my recovery where I always kind of felt like I just wasn't doing enough, you know?
Right.
And I can't live in that space very long, like because that brings up old things. Like he's like, oh well, I'm just a screw up, like
Yeah.
I'm like yeah, no wonder you can't do anything. So you get those old voices in your head, and so I'll never forget having first thing was like I did a fifth step with my sponsor, and those of y'all, I mean, the inventory, you do the inventory during your first step, and then you read it off to your sponsor during your fifth step. And I actually had a therapist that was running like an aftercare program that we were in as well. And
Who was it?
I'm gonna shout him out, Eric Banachek.
Eric Banachek.
So yeah, if y'all, he's right in this like right down the street from here. So, but man, he agreed to meet me before the aftercare thing and do like another fifth step with me, like in such a super kind like way that I needed that too, through that process. And so but there's pieces in my story where there was like, yeah, you're not meditating right, I'm like, and I struggle with a little bit of ADD as well.
Yeah.
And so that's I'd be like, I'm like in the shower, right? I'm like, I got to do all these. I got to meditate. Close my eyes. Meditate. But man, I remember I got a bike, and that was a big deal for me, because I remember my parents wouldn't buy me anything that was like expensive. for a while. And I remember,
Good for them.
and they're like, the last time we got you one of these,
You pawned it.
yeah. And so I got a bike, and I remember I was riding all the time. And it was like the most clear, and like like it was a chance for me to just be able to sit, and it was just me on my bike, and everything that they were explaining of what you would get through like a meditation, like I was like, I'm like experiencing that. I
Right.
remember I was so scared to like tell my sponsor, like, hey, like this is in the mornings I go and I just ride my bike, man. Like, and I feel like that's like my meditation. And then I did, and he was like receptive to it. He wasn't like, man, like that's not how you're supposed to do
That
it.
could have gone the other way, though.
Definitely could have. Definitely could have. And there's a lot of things that happened for me. Like, I was going to a primary AA meeting, and Northland was like, and it's because I was being very like, I loved going to the meetings with people that were my own age, but I also struggled with that as well because like I got very distracted, and like anything chaotic that would happen,
Right.
like I wanted to be plugged into that. I'm like, oh,
Be in the
people
thick of it, yeah.
people are outside smoking stogies, like that's where I want to be,
With the cool kids.
yeah, exactly. And so I remember like Consolidate, and my sponsor's like, why don't you just come to Northland for a while? And there was like a lot of old timers and stuff like that. I had people in Northland, and this Northland's not like this so much today. And it was starting to change when I started going. But I still had some old timers in there coming up to me and just saying, being like, hey, you're a heroin addict, like they got like other meetings, and my sponsor would just be like, you're gonna have a bunch of people that say that
Yeah, those people kicked me out of AA.
Yep.
Essentially,
Same.
that's why.
Same. But I think what I keep thinking about is how like when you first get into recovery, the goal is just to stop doing drugs, right? And the steps for that are super easy. Like it's a checklist, right? Like pray, meditate, work these steps, help another alcoholic or addict. Like it's real. If I just do these things, I will not get high. But eventually, right, at least for me, right, the not getting high part got real easy. And then it was just like, well, like, how do I live life? And
Right.
And I feel like I had to start incorporating some other tools, right? Like you were talking about therapy, therapy, different forms of meditation, different, just different things.
Yeah, so for me personally, I moved here right beginning of 2020 from Florida.
Best time to move to Austin, Texas.
It was yeah. So in Florida, I was really connected to, I work NA. I was really connected to the NA community out there. And I was sponsoring like 5-6 guys who were getting multiple years, and every one of them was working, and it kept me really involved with it. Then I move out here, and then I'm going to NA meetings, but I'm not meeting newcomers to sponsor out here. All of my sponsees who I've gone through the steps with, because, in AA, the steps you could work the steps pretty much at your own pace. In NA, it's, years and years. It took me, I think, 4.5 years to finish my first round of 12 steps. So once I finished my round of steps with my sponsees, it was like, I'm not living there anymore, find somebody else. So I'm not sponsoring anybody anymore. So I lost that part of me. That was my way of giving back. And then I just felt so empty, like, because I didn't have that anymore. I couldn't just go like, oh, I wouldn't say that it was getting tedious, but it kept me busy because I had a few guys who every day was, I had one of them saying like, hey, let's meet up for coffee. I have just finished the step work. And then once that was gone, I felt like I lost part of my purpose.
So was it more of a spiritual loss that you felt, or was it like an identity loss?
A bit of an identity loss.
Yeah.
A little bit of both too, because you gain a lot when you help people. And it makes you feel worthy, and then not having that anymore, and then meetings shutting down completely, and then me not really having, like, I have a ton of friends in recovery out here, but not a lot of people who I would go to meetings with, because most of my friends out here work other fellowships. And I was just kind of lost. And, I got into transcendental meditation, which that kind of, especially for somebody with ADHD, I needed some deep meditation and a way to get into it. So that helped me tremendously through it. And I still practice all the time. And if it weren't for that, I don't know where I'd be now, because I found that one thing that I do every single day that it might not always turn out. It might not have the results that I wanted. I might not get to some spiritual place. It might just be me sitting there for 20 minutes thinking about work. But when I'm done, I'm like, I did something for myself. I put the work in, and that's what we're taught here, right? You just put the work in, and then whatever happens, happens.
So question, Nick, as your recovery, your personal recovery has shifted and changed over the years. How about professionally? Because I remember back in the day when you and I worked together, we were like 12 steps or die. Like there is no other option. But I have a suspicion that you don't see things that way anymore.
No, I think then, right? And I think we as I remember, we kind of both gravitated towards that. Well, and a lot of that's like what you're taught, right?
Yeah.
You're taught this way, and it's what's been given, and that's what was like given to me too, And so, and then even I think there was even a hint of me where it's like, yeah, like I don't know if I vibe with this as much as I used to, but also it was the way that I was taught. So I don't want to think that I know how to teach something better than what was given to me. So there was a piece of me where it's like, well, I'm going to continue to implement this and talk about this in the same way that I have, even though I've seen my life change, and I don't know if that's as clear as I want it to be, but I think that there is still a piece of me that feels that way, where it's like, you got to start from, I wouldn't want to write the book of Nick's recovery,
Right.
Because I think that in each person it develops differently, as far as what recovery means. I think a lot of people talk about a pink cloud and things like that. I got sober and life sucked for a while,
Tell us about that.
Well, I got out of treatment, and I think I played the treatment card over and over and over for my loved ones, for the courts, to stay out of jail.
How many times did you go to treatment?
To treatment. So the last time I went, it was the 12th treatment center.
Okay.
Do you count it as only one time, even though you left multiple times during treatment?
Yeah, yeah. It's as long as it's in the same month, it's one time. But
Nick, didn't you walked from the Arbor to Cedar Park, right?
I did. So
how far of a walk is that?
25 miles.
No.
Yes.
It's 16.7.
Okay.
But when you're detoxing a little bit, it feels like 100.
Yeah.
And it's in the middle of nowhere, so you're kind of like, I remember like being like, is this the right way? No, like probably didn't turn
was
back.
this an AMA walk? Like you left and then
Yeah. It was the day of my last dose of detox medication.
okay.
And that was an excuse. I had been the 2 weeks that I had been there, if that, every single day was like, I'm leaving, so.
But once that Suboxone's running out, you're like, I have no more excuses to stay.
Like,
No more reasons to stay.
Pretty sure I got something at the house that will be, so yeah, that was, 17, let's just call it 17 miles.
How long did it take?
Forever. I don't even know how long.
Was it like
and
night?
It was that night. Everybody else went to an outside meeting. They were like, we can't take this guy to an outside meeting because he'll get gone. And I remember the person that was kind of supervising at the time was having like a really solid one-on-one with the other guy that had some medical stuff going on. That's the reason he couldn't go. And so yeah, I took off during that time, and it was a good walk, man. I think we all can relate to like that struggle and that fight, in
The walk too. Yeah, I can
the walk
definitely
to
relate to that.
get it all out, and it was an adventure. I crossed by skunks, I'd never come across a wild skunk before.
That was a sign. It was a sign.
I crossed by this property where like these horses like followed me, and I was like, this is a sign. That's where I was like, this is a sign that this is
The
the
horses think
this
this
is
is the right
thing to do,
My
and
spirit guides.
so, but yeah, luckily I went back to treatment, and I think gosh, every single time there's very few times that I went to treatment and I didn't want to be sober. Like every time I walked in there, I was like, yeah, like my life sucks right now. Like I need to, but gosh, it changes so quickly, and it doesn't change in the like I don't want to be sober kind of way. It just changes in the like I got this, kind of way, and
Yes.
so
That's one of the best tricks your disease can play on you is the like, I've been sober 2 weeks, I put on 5 pounds, I'm not detoxing anymore. I got it.
It's really sad, and it's so when I was in treatment the last time at Recovery Unplugged about 6.5 years ago, all these people would AMA, and I would notice that everybody says the same thing when they're AMAing. I know what I got to do. I'm gonna get home. My sponsor's picking me up from the airport. Like I just got to get back to it. And I could say I heard it probably 5 or 6 times, like from different people, and 4 of those people died within like a week.
Yeah.
yeah, that hits hard, I mean, before I went back to treatment this last time, I remember sitting in the car with my dad. We're both like, man, it was,
And you're real close with your dad.
really close. Yeah, he's been. I mean, he's just been. He's the guy that's bailed me out of everything.
Right.
And I've got tremendous love for that man, and I got a lot of remorse, for what I put him and the rest of my family through. But, yeah, I remember sitting in the car with him. It's before going to treatment to the Arbor again. And we're sitting there and we're trying to figure out like what the hell to do, like, and it's like we've been to treatment center after treatment center. And I remember like we're both like in agreement, like that I need to go to like a long-term mental institution, like a year minimum kind of deal. And we're both in agreement. We're like, okay, like this is where we're gonna go. Then we go to the place and they're like, dude, like you don't qualify to go to long-term, like you need to go back
Were you
to
trying to go to like
rehab.
the state hospital?
We went, yeah.
Yeah.
We went to Shoal Creek.
Yeah.
We went in there and they're asking me all these questions. And they're just like, yeah, man, like you're
You
just
don't
like
need to be here.
And you're at this place where you don't want to start playing the system and say what you know that you could probably say for them to let you in. Are you trying to be honest at this point?
Yeah, I was trying to be honest, as much as possible. I think some things were played up a little bit to like just be like get me away from my dad, where I feel a lot of guilt like being around him right now.
Yeah.
So, but for the most part, like pretty honest, and they're like, yeah, man, like you're just like addicted to heroin, man. Like you need to,
So
Right.
so we got on this because we were talking about how much your life sucked after you got out of treatment. So
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sucked. I had to go to jail.
sober?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had to go to jail sober. Like going to sober living and stuff like that. That was probably a highlight. Even though it doesn't feel like that a lot of times when you're getting out of treatment, you're like, I got to go stay with a bunch of other guys.
Right.
And I know the biggest thing for me was I lost access to being in touch with my son.
Yeah.
And so while I was in treatment, my girlfriend at the time, she was pregnant, and through the time that I was in treatment, I was separated for most of her, like that last part of her pregnancy. I'm so grateful that I got a pass to go see Harley be born. That's his name. And it was such a gift to be able to do that. But her family and her and my family, they're all trying to figure out how this is going to work, right? They're like that. Nick, he's facing jail time. He's in treatment again. She was also struggling with addiction and through all that stuff. And so her, along with like the courts and my family did the best they could. They tried to be like, hey, like we want to be the parents,
Okay.
but the other family was like, look, like if we're not going to be involved, in this child's life, we don't want you guys to be like, obviously both families are like fighting with this like disease right now. And so they went for a closed adoption, and that like hit me like a ton of bricks. I don't think that I've ever experienced that much emotional pain in my life, especially through this whole period where I'm like, I'm going to be a sober new dad,
Right.
And so that, along with going to jail, along with just all this turmoil and stuff like that, I think I just tucked my head down and was just like, I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do because I just don't know. Like, and quite honestly, to be real, like, I think a lot of me was like, because if I don't do this, like, I hurt so bad right now. Like, I don't know if I will make it through, like, another use, and
Yeah.
so,
That's I think that's a good example of what you say, Jason, that like don't use no matter what.
Right.
Like that was real big for Jason when Jason was first getting sober, and like that's an example of that, right? Like,
And accepting life on life's terms. Like that is textbook accepting life on life's terms, because it's like you have this one thing where you're like, my life sucks right now, but I'm going to be a new dad. So this is what I'm going to put my focus on. This is where my hope lies. I'm going to be a good dad. And then that's gone all of a sudden. And
yeah.
you're like, what are you doing? Like, this is,
Well-
how did you finally accept that to,
That is,
Have you?
You know what? I will say it's a daily battle, right? Like, and here's the thing, like, I think, I've gone and talk about my story. Some days I can bring that up, and sometimes I'll be like, man, I had to go through a hard time, and like a lot of it's because like, I'm sitting here almost, 12 years at this point, and I've still not, still not seen my son again, and, I think there's a lot of me though that embellishes the place where it's like, man, like if that opportunity ever comes up, like I want to be fully present, for that moment. And so, you know, there's, therapy obviously in my story, and some of this, like, I don't think I accepted it whenever I was newly sober. I think there was just a lot of like sad moments, and a lot of, but I think there was also, as hard as I think it is to kind of say a little bit, there was a piece of it too where it was like, man, that pain, like working the program, working with other people, I'd never had seen anything else work in my life other than doing drugs, And so the piece where it was like where I found relief was like just through helping other people, like, and it took me, and it was almost like that golden nugget that like really kind of like I was like, shit, like this works, and like I'm here hurting, and I'm able to actually continue moving.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the most difficult things anybody ever would have to go through, right? Is like, losing the ability to see their offspring. And it's almost like the universe kind of, I think what you're getting at is like the universe sent you something really hard to walk through to realize like, oh, I can walk through this and not get high.
Yeah.
What else can I do without getting high, right?
Yeah, it was, and I think that's also kind of like why it took a little while to kind of go through the therapy route, because there was a piece for me where I was like, man, I don't know if I can crack that back open, right? Like, and actually sit through there and work through it. But sure, it was about 2 years, until I started being able to like, you know, you see things happen in your life, right? Like it was like I was going through the 12 steps, things were fine, but also like my relationships with like my significant others, like some of the relationships with my fellow, you know, recovery people and stuff like that felt like some people were getting more in relationships than I was. And it was something that I started picking up on where it was like, man, like I am like I want to be more in depth
Yeah.
when it is
Like there
when
was
I'm
like a part of you that was still kind of closed off and unavailable almost.
yeah, sheltered, you know, like guarded. And so therapy was one of those things for me where it was like you bring that in. And so, yeah, like it sucked, you know, at the beginning.
Is there something that you practice to be more present with people or to be more open to people that you got out of therapy?
Um, I think a lot of that is internal for me. A lot of times, like not sitting and overthinking stuff, right? Like, because I remember there'd be like pauses, or if I'm not making somebody laugh or something like that, or like, you know, I used to take that super like
Yeah.
personal and be
Yeah.
like,
If you text somebody and they don't text you back within like 20 minutes, you're like, fuck, dude, I thought we were friends. I
yeah.
guess they don't like me
Yeah.
anymore.
I was like, I knew it, man. I knew it. This person's dangerous.
They all hate me.
I took some friends to like a movie. Like we all went out to a movie together, and I got to pick the movie, and the movie turned out to be terrible, and they hated it.
What
and
movie
like,
was it?
I'm not gonna say it because I loved it, but it was Uncut Gems. So
Oh,
I loved
what?
it. I loved it. Everybody who I went with did not like it, did not enjoy it, and I'm just looking at them and I'm like, these people are never gonna talk to me again because they're just like, great fucking choice, Jason. And I swore they'd never talk to me again, but we're still friends.
Chelsea calls that Anxiety the movie.
It is.
She got like halfway through and she was like, you finish this alone.
That's what they said, and I'm like, I loved it, and they're like, I'm like, oh, what? You come to movies only to enjoy yourself, you weirdo?
Yeah, I thought that was incredible. Any movie that can invoke emotion like that out of me, like I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like I see you.
And you know what? The people, like, I myself don't suffer from anxiety, but I know at least one of the people with me did. So maybe that was like, I get enough of this in my everyday life. I don't need to
Yeah.
pay money for this.
I think that movie solidified for me the idea that Adam Sandler is a national treasure.
I agree. Big fan of the show, too.
Yeah. Adam, thanks for watching. We're getting towards the end of our time.
Already?
Yeah, which is
Man.
which is wow. And you know what's been really cool is a lot of times we spend a lot of our time together talking about the before part, right? You know, which and we really didn't talk about that at all today, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah,
Really?
no, I agree. Well, and a lot of it's like, you know, a part of me is like, man, before I did a lot of drugs, you know, like
that's the story.
wrecking a lot of stuff, but you know, and I do want to capsulize, you know, it sucked just after, right? But like gifts like continue, and here's the thing is like I went down the road of recovery. It grew for me in a lot of different ways. You know, once I started kind of getting deeper, relationships started becoming more. And then also it was like, man, like all I had to do was just continue to go down this path that was still beginning to be carved out. And like doors just continued to open for me, you know? And so that's been like the biggest gift of anything else is like the fact that like the connections that I have today are like more than you were talking about. I just wanted to be a normal, you know, the normal guy or whatever like that. I remember I'd see people cutting the yard and washing their car and stuff like that. I'm like, I'd be like going to the, you know, the pawn shop or the dope dealer or something like that, seeing these people. I'm like, God, like if I could just,
I 100%
if I could just
relate
be
to
that
that.
dude, you know, and
And if I can add, you know, I've gotten to watch you grow in the way you have relationships, you know, because like I remember when we worked together before, like I already had kids, I was already married, you know, and you were in a relationship that you'd been in for a while. But I remember, without going into detail, that like that kind of ended because you weren't ready to commit further
for sure.
on a couple different ways.
That sounds like detail to me.
That's not
I'm
too
just
much.
kidding.
No. But like I also remember you coming and being like, yo, I just met this girl, Nina. You know, and it's
On a freaking bike ride, dude.
yeah.
Like,
and y'all been together 5 years
almost
now?
5 years now. Yeah.
Which like is huge. And you're talking about like the work that's gone into it, right? Like y'all have been to couples counseling together. Y'all own a home together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Kyle, Texas.
Yeah.
Shout out, Kyle.
like it's been cool for me to watch that because like I've seen you in 2 significant relationships and they're very different.
And I appreciate that. And, you know, I think my prior relationship, you know, it was a good relationship too. And we're still really, really good friends.
Yeah.
Like, and I have a lot of love for that person, you know. But I also think just the way that it worked out for me, like I still had a lot of growing to do, you know. And so, and I still do, you know, like this is we talked about like the growth piece, right? Like the part in the big book that says that we have to continue to spiritually grow. I've really just thought about that in a bigger picture. You know, that's not just like within the 12 steps or seeking God or anything like that. That's like in all ways, right? If it makes me uncomfortable, there's probably something that I need to look into on that. And sometimes I'm ready for that. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, like let's dive into that. Sometimes I'm like,
Later.
yeah.
Or
Well,
not at all.
Let me find somebody in network with my insurance, you know. So,
Joke's on you. No one's in that one.
dang it.
Well, shall we get to the... Yeah. So I know you've skimmed the show before, but one of the things we like to do towards the end is a little something that we like to call
Rapid Fire Question Time.
It's Rapid Fire Question Time.
There's explosions now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
I will... Shit, I did not prepare
Okay.
at all. Go.
You get to have a bromance with anybody, living or dead. And I'm talking like Ben Affleck and what's the other one's name?
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon type bromance. Who would it be? Could be a celebrity, could just be...
Oh man, I gotta Theo Vaughn. I like feel like I've like just been listening to that guy so much recently.
Do you feel like he's talking to you, like giving you messages?
Yeah. I mean, I just the way his mind works, you know, and like I just like he's hilarious. So,
Okay. All right, there's always a music question. Title sponsor, Recovery Unplugged.
Music is our medicine.
Yeah. What is a song that you throw on, like a banger for like when you want to feel confident, you want to feel like a G, you got to feel on top of the world? What's your go-to song?
Oh, that's so hard. I feel like I haven't like thought about that in a while. Probably some Travis Scott. I know that's super basic, but like I don't know the song names or anything like that, but
Travis
probably
Scott.
yeah.
Okay, acceptable.
All right. What was the last thing and when was it? Last time you cried a happy cry?
Ooh, gosh, it was happy and it was sad, right? So I was going through those photo memories, and man, I just like started looking at some pictures of my dog that passed away years back, and man, I was just like missing her and loving her and laughing about like
What was her name?
Juno.
Juno.
I remember
Yeah.
Juno. I met Juno.
Yeah, super, just a great dog, right? So,
Rest in peace, Juno.
rest in peace, Juno. But yeah, like I think that was like it was a solid cry too.
That's a good
I haven't cried like that in a minute, so it was good.
All right. Ben and Jerry come to you and they say, Nick Ballejo, we would like to make a Nick Ballejo signature ice cream flavor. What do you call it and what's in it? And they're in a hurry.
Horchata probably.
Okay.
Would be something that I would probably want to test out, but Gosh. With vanilla, or I think.
Horchata and vanilla. What do you call it?
Knick-knack.
That's a good one.
I like it. Knick-knack. All right, last one.
Okay. Jeez. All right. We're in Texas. We're all probably taco aficionados, right? Corn or flour?
HEB has both. They're mixed together, and
Oh,
they're amazing.
mixer.
They do have
This
a
guy's
hybrid.
nuts.
You gotta go early in the morning to HEB to get them.
You gotta wait in line.
Yeah, so they run out.
All right. Good compromise.
Yeah, but if traditionally speaking, I think I'm gonna go corn on that one. If none of them were gonna exist anymore, I would probably go corn because I think I just have solid respect for the corn tortilla. So
Nick took that question to another level. Like, okay, we're gonna get rid of flour tortillas forever. No one
gotta
can
go
ever
all the way down the line.
Well, I mean,
Think
that's a
about
good
it.
way to think. If you have to make a choice, you have to think like this is never going to be an option again.
ever. All right. Well, Nick, thank you so much for coming out today. It's we got to talk about a bunch of cool stuff, and it's always a pleasure just to sit down and shoot the shit with you a little bit. The last thing we have for you is we have literally dozens and dozens of listeners to this podcast, loyal listeners. So we're going to give you the floor to share one final message with them about whatever you'd like.
All right. Well, dozens and dozens of listeners, listen up. No, guys, I really appreciate the opportunity as far as being on this show. If I'm going to tell anybody, to anything, right? Like, I'm just going to be like, find somebody to help today, it doesn't mean like, probably maybe not everybody's in recovery or anything else, but like, I think, if I found myself in a low point, in one of the lowest points that I was in, I called somebody, I called my sponsor and asked, like, to let him know what was going on. He told me to pick up the phone and just go down the phone list and just start calling people and ask them if they needed any help with anything today. And it was such an amazing thing for me. So if anybody's listening and they're having a hard day today, man, just go through your phone, go through your Rolodex, and call people, and it'll be awkward. Some of us are gonna be like, "Well, what?" But man, find somebody to help, man. There's always somebody out there. So
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Nick. And as we like to say here on Talksicology, when it comes to recovery, there's 1,000 roads in and 1,000 roads out. We hope you find
your
yours.
road.
Oh, you son of a bitch. We hope you find your road. Son of a-